My sister wants to mock me. She says I'm ugly and she tries to embarrass me in front of the entire family. So what do? I look her in the eyes and I say, you know what, sister? I didn't want to go this far, but if I'm so ugly, how come both of your husbands left you? How come they don't like you and they make fun of you, but I'm the one you take your hatred out on?
My name's Sarah and my sister is Rebecca, and we've never got along. She's always considered herself as the pretty one in the family, and she's always just made fun of me my whole life. She's utterly relentless in her mocking of me as a person. When we were younger, she would make fun of me at school in front of everybody. When I was in the 4th grade, she started calling me ugly, and ever since she hasn't stopped. Just last week, we were at a family gathering, and when I say gathering, I mean there was about 25 people there. My mother, father, aunts, uncles, heck, even my grandparents. My sister was talking to my Aunt Sharon about how she got a new job as a barista, and that the owner only hired attractive women. Well, I was appalled that she would brag about something so pathetic. Yet here she was going on and on about it. I looked at her and I said, "Why would you be so proud about getting hired somewhere based on your looks?" Rebecca stopped talking and turned towards me and just looked at me like I had 3 heads and said, "Well, don't you want to be hired because you are good at the job?" Well, at least someone actually hired me. You would not stand a chance because you're ugly. And you know what? I don't know why you're even here. You know you don't belong. Well, I put my fork down and looked at her and said, "What's that supposed to mean?" "Look around you, Sarah. You look nothing like us. You're a sad case of I don't know how to do my makeup." Rebecca laughed as she sipped her lemon water. I was so mad at her that I finally had enough of her crap, so I stood up and I said, "Oh yeah, well tell me, Rebecca, why did both of your ex-husbands leave you then?" Laughing in her direction. "You can't be as good-looking as you think you are if you can't keep one. No, 2 men." The entire room fell silent, and I could, feel all my family's eyes on Rebecca and me. You could cut the tension in the air with a knife. I looked around the room, and then all of a sudden it hit me. This woman, who's supposed to be my sister, has outcast me my entire life. And now she has nothing to say because she knows I'm right. She hasn't been in a committed relationship long enough to let the paint dry. Because she's cruel. Nothing's beautiful about a black heart that has no compassion for other people. "Well?" I asked her. "What do you have to say about that? You always have something smart to say, so don't be quiet now." I continued to laugh in her face, and Rebecca puts down her glass of water, turns around and leaves. "Wait," I said. "Don't forget to look both ways when you cross the street to get your car. Someone might mistake you for a real woman." Rebecca turned around to say something, and then she just scurried off and, turned on her heels. My family was left staring at me, and my father spoke up saying, "Honey, it's about time you spoke up." I looked at him shocked. I never realized that he felt that way before. Nobody had ever stood up to my sister, especially not me, but I could not sit here and let her tell me that I was not a part of my own family because I didn't look like her. Who does she think she is anyways? "So, you're taking my side?" I asked my dad, somewhat confused, and he looked at me and he said, "Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure that, everyone at this table's on your side." Well, I was stunned, and I looked around the room at everybody while they each shook their head in affirmation. "Well, how come no one's ever said anything before?" But nobody answered. I guess no one wanted to be the bad guy. But I've gone years with dealing with Rebecca. You'd think somebody would have said something at some point, right? And I just ended up leaving and heading home for the night. And that's not even the tip of the iceberg. Something even more unexpected ended up happening. About 3 days later, I received a text message from Rebecca's ex-husband, Tom. saying that he had heard about the confrontation with Rebecca and me at the family gathering from one of our cousins who, by the way, is friends with him, and that he wanted to tell me why he left Rebecca. He said that he's met a woman who he fell in love with because she was just like me. She has a kind heart, a beautiful soul. He also said that he hated Rebecca and always treated me terribly, and he just wished that he would have said something sooner because I did not deserve to be treated that way. Well, I was shocked by his words. For once it felt like I was the pretty one and she was the ugly witch that she was. I had never had somebody tell me something so sweet before, but it also helped me to see my sister in a different light. Maybe she can't help but who she is, even if that means being awful and rude, but she'll never be able to keep a man to save her life, so she'll probably be alone when she dies. I've been alone my whole life, so I can relate to her on the level at least. I told him thank you for the nice place and nice things, and he told me I should not let her get me down. He's absolutely right about it, but I just wish I knew how to forgive her and move on. Somehow, we could be sisters, but I don't think she would forgive me for what I did in front of the whole family. Now, I want to know why her husband Trevor left her. I'm going to ask him and see what he says, so I text him. I texted up old Trev and asked him why he left my sister, and he told me that he did not like the way she treats people, and that she always criticized him for the smallest of things. Anything he did wrong, and it didn't matter how perfectly he set the table or closed the toothpaste, it was never the right way. Which I knew that about her, because growing up she used to do the same darn thing. So I told him that I understood what he was talking about and how she did the same thing to me. I started to think back, and I began to feel a bit guilty for what I've done to Rebecca. It doesn't make sense, I know, but something tells me well, I don't have to, but I'm going to apologize to her, because just because she treats me terribly all these years, that's not how I want to leave things between us. The least I can do is ask her to have some lunch with me and talk. She's still human after all, so I gave her a call and she picked up saying, "What the hell do you want?" I paused and took a deep breath and said, "I was just wondering if you would like to go to lunch tomorrow." She laughed and told me that she would rather drop dead, and I told her that I really wanted to take her out to lunch, my treat, just to make up for what I said. "Well, you're taking me to the most expensive restaurant in town, then." Well, I bit my lips trying not to snap at her like I did at the family gathering and sighed and said, "That's fine." She said, "Okay, great, you can meet me at noon." And then she hung up. I can't believe the nerves. She would make me take her to the most expensive place in town, but I did put myself in this situation, so you know what, I'll deal with it. I got ready for bed and laid down, but all I did was toss and turn all night, worrying about what I'm going to say to Rebecca. So I was really tired when it finally came time to the morning, and I just laid there regretting even offering to take her to lunch. I had a bad feeling in my gut. It's not going to go as planned. That's usually how things pan out for me anyway, so I get up, I get ready for the day, and nervously wait for the clock to read 11:45, so I could be on my way to the restaurant. I picked out the one dress I swore I would never wear because I was not as pretty as Rebecca, who could probably pull it off without even trying. I looked in the mirror, and for once in my life I saw myself for who I really was. I don't need the perfect face. I don't need the perfect body not to pull off this dress. My confidence alone will pull me through. So I checked the clock and saw that it's time to go. I hurried, grabbed my handbag, and left the house, and I rehearsed in my head over and over what I was going to say to her once we sat down. But I know I probably won't be able to say exactly the way I plan it, because I never could say I really meant what I rehearsed, what I was going to say ahead of time. But I have to try to say the right things in the right way, or it will not mend anything. As soon as I get there, I look in the window and saw her already there, sitting at the table in the very middle of the restaurant, of course. She was wearing a black dress that made her look like $1,000,000, dressed up to win a princess's heart at the ball. I took one look at myself in the mirror that they hung at the entrance of the restaurant and took a deep breath and walked up to her at the table. She looked up and down and paused for a second, looking at me. "Since when do you wear dresses?" Well, I turned my head and looked at the imaginary camera like you do in those sitcoms on TV, and then looked back at her and said, "Well, since I found out I have a beautiful soul." Then I sat down. She laughed and then covered her mouth like she did not mean to, and I just draped my napkin across my lap and picked up the menu. I asked her what she was going to get, and she reluctantly picked up her menu and looked at it like it was strange and told me she wasn't sure. We're not here for small talk, are we? Don't you have something you want to say to me?" She cleared her throat, looking over the top of her menu at me while cocking her head to the right. I looked over my menu at her and told her that I was not here to be chastised for apologizing to her, and that I would say what I had to say when I was ready. She slams her menu down at this point and told me I was being selfish, and that's when I snapped. I yelled at her, "Selfish? The only selfish person in this room is you." I stopped realizing that the whole restaurant was staring at us, and I lowered my voice and told her that I was not going to take her crap anymore. I told her that I was here to apologize, but that she needs to apologize first. And with that, she rolls her eyes and told me that I'm crazy. Rebecca gestured for the waiter to come over to our table. Then she ordered the absolute most expensive meal on the menu. Then they walked away. I looked at her and told her that her ex-husband Tom had messaged me the other day. And when I told her that, she looked shocked and asked me what he had to say. So I tell her about exactly what he told me, and she just sits there and I say, "What? Are you surprised that somebody thinks I'm beautiful? Somebody that left you for someone who was just like me?" She looks down at her hands and did not utter a word. So I spoke up again and said, "You know what? I always thought you were the prettier one because you never stopped reminding me of the fact. But the truth is, I'm beautiful. I may not look like you, but I really wanted us to both apologize to each other and finally be sisters. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen now, does it?" I pushed my chair out from under the table and stood up and told her that she could have fun paying for her meal because I would not be staying to eat with her. As I turned around to walk out the restaurant, she told me to wait, and I turned back around to face her. "Tom never told me why he left me." Well, that took me off guard, and I sat back down and told her that I did not realize that she didn't know. And then she starts to cry all of a sudden, and I start to feel horrible for her. But I did not feel bad because, well, had she treated both of her husbands better, she would not have had 2 ex-husbands, and she would still be married to one of them. Instead of opening up to me, though, she just yelled at me to leave, so I grabbed my handbag and scurried off. I was not going to sit there and watch her wallow in her own self-pity. I get home. I change into something a bit more comfortable. Some better clothes in the closet. And I sit down on my couch and I start thinking about what Tom had said. I do have a beautiful soul, don't I, Tom? Why should I sit here and not put myself out there and try to find someone who will love me for who I am, just because Rebecca is going to die alone, bitter and cold? That doesn't mean I have to. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. Today's story is a sisterly drama, but you have seen nothing yet. We're about to hop into update 1. Before we do that, though, only about 6% of people who are watching this video right now are subscribed to the channel. So take a second, press that subscribe button underneath this video. Thank you so much for that support. I appreciate it. Let's jump into update number 1. So, the next weekend that came around, I went to the salon down the street from my house and got my makeup, hair, nails, everything done. I'm going to go to the most popular bar in my town and try to meet somebody. And that's exactly what I did. I bought a new dress that complemented my curvy body just right. And then I showed up at the bar and went inside. to my surprise, there was a heck of a lot of people there that I went to high school with. I was not expecting that, and that's when I noticed my sister Rebecca was there also. She looked as beautiful as ever, and she was just dancing in the middle of the room, captivating. I really did not want her to see me, so I ducked and I dodged behind a man that was about 5 inches taller than me, not realizing he was one of Rebecca's friends. And he grabbed me by the arm and said, "Hey, aren't you Rebecca's sister?" I stiffened up a little bit and reluctantly told him, "Yes, I am." And he gave me a hug and told me it's nice to see me. I laughed nervously and peeked over at my sister, who was staring daggers into me. I told her friend that it's nice to see him too and that I needed to get along. Well, nonsense. You just got here, girl. Your sister's right over there. And then I felt a cold splash of liquid hit me in the face as the ice went directly into my mouth. I gasped and stood there frozen in place as my sister starts yelling in my face how I don't belong in this bar. I looked at her shocked, clearly on my face, and she was wearing her favorite necklace like she always did. So I reached out and snatched it from her neck. And when I did, the pendant broke upon it. A white powder came out all over my hand, and I looked down at my hand, and it took me a minute to realize what that white powder was. But once I figured it out, I was more than shocked. I also knew exactly how to get her back. She would never see it coming. So I throw her necklace back at her, and the powder smacks her right there in the face. And I walked out of the bar, ready to get my revenge once and for all. Rebecca's friend allowed me out to see if I was okay, and, well, I told him I was fine, and I head to my car. I had vodka and cranberry juice dripping into my eyes. It was burning like crazy, so I walked as fast as I could to get a napkin and wipe it out. My next move was to follow Rebecca around for the next week and watched her every single direction. Since I ruined her necklace full of drugs, I know for a fact she'll be getting more soon. And when she does, I'm going to be there waiting. And when she least expects it, I'm going to call the police, and I'm going to turn her in. She should have, well, thought twice before messing with me. Update number 2. So, the next day I showed up at Rebecca's house and waited a few homes down. I actually rented a car for the week just so she would not recognize me, and, well, I was following her around. I staked out her house for about 5 hours until she starts to move again. She finally came outside, gets into her car, and leaves, and I slowly start to pull out to tailgate her until she pulled up to the salon I was just at yesterday before I went to the bar. I parked, I waited, and she went inside. I brought binoculars with me so I could watch her through the window of everywhere she went, and I made sure I changed my appearance so I could follow her on foot if need be. So, here I am sitting there, and I bust out the binoculars and start watching as she gets a haircut and coloring. I was probably sitting there for a good 2 hours before she finally waltzed back out to her car. I waited for a second before pulling out behind her, and then I followed her to a fast food joint. It was just around the corner, and I ended up ordering food for myself right behind her. I had a laugh at that. She never suspected a darn thing, and it's actually quite hilarious. She's oblivious to her surroundings, and after she got her food, she went back home, so I had to sit and wait again for her to come back and out and leave. But she stayed in the house, and to my surprise, someone pulled into her driveway and went and knocked at her door. It was, well, a shady-looking character. Some dude with really long hair and a beard. This has to be it, I thought to myself. This has to be. They end up sitting on the front porch of her, well, swing my dad made for her, and they were talking. I watched them closely to see if they handed off anything to one another. Well, it took about 25 minutes before it happened, but I could clearly see, clear as day, her handing him some money, and he handed her a cigarette pack. And I know she doesn't smoke no cigarettes, so that has to be what's holding the drugs. I practically jumped out of my seat when I saw this, and I hurried, I grabbed my phone, and I dialed the police. And after I told them what I just witnessed, a drug deal in progress, they told me to leave the area immediately and that an officer would be there shortly, and I told them I would, but I lied and I just kept sitting there. There's no way I'm missing this. I waited for another 10 minutes and then I spotted the car that was coming down the block, and it was a cop. I ducked down into my seat, and while the police car drove past me and pulled up into front of my sister's house, they were both still sitting there lost in conversation, so they didn't even notice the police car pull up. Update number 3. My sister finally saw the cop and froze. Well, she pointed at the police car, and the shady dude jumped up and took off running while my sister just sat there. It was like she didn't know what to do, because one police officer took off after the shady dude and another one walked up to my sister sitting there on the porch. I just sat there watching as she tried to kick the cigarette pack directly underneath the swing, but the police officer watched her do it, and they know the drug was in there because I told them that's where it was. And I watched as the cop gestured for her to stand up and turn around. That's when I got out of my car and stood there with my phone in hand taking a video. The police officer reached down and picked up the pack of cigarettes, opened it up, and sure enough, there was a bag of white residue. It was a powder that he pulled out. I could clearly hear the police officer ask Rebecca what it is, and she says she doesn't know and that her friend threw it under the swing when he took off running. She also told him that she doesn't do drugs. And that's when I started hollering over at her about how she did do drugs and that now she's busted. Rebecca looked over at me, and I ripped my hat off, and I let my hair fall down to my shoulders, swinging in the wind, and I said, "Yeah, it's me, Rebecca. Look at me. I hope you look beautiful in an orange jumpsuit." I laughed and started dancing around the car hysterically. Well, she turned to beet red and starts crying. I was thrilled I finally got her back, and she would never forget this day. And her criminal record will never ever let her forget this either. I was so pleased with myself that I posted the video on every social media account that I have. Well, my sister was arrested for possession of a controlled substance, and since it's Saturday, she has to sit in jail until she can see the judge here on Monday. My parents aren't very happy with me for setting her up, basically, but my dad secretly fist-bumped me when I left the house today. Yeah, maybe I did go too far. Maybe I did. But after years of torment and the fact that she's been lying to everyone in her life, I mean, it was bound to happen anyways. She tried to call me from jail to bail her out, and I just laughed at her, right on the phone, and told her good luck. I even asked her if she was the prettiest girl in the slammer. She wasn't too happy about my jokes, but hey, she had it coming. Now, I'm going to start treating her the way she has always treated me, except I'm going to make fun of her for being so pretty. Even her looks could not get her out of jail. That's why it's so funny to me. So I ask you guys in the comment section down below, did I go too far?
So guys, the comment section on this one was insane. I'm telling you, 50% of the people were saying, hey, OP, you're just way too petty. I mean, people have real drug addictions, and you could have ruined her life with the police. But on the other hand, there were people saying the complete opposite. So I want to hear exactly what you guys think. Drop your comments down below. Let me know. If you were in OP's position, would you have pulled this stunt involving the police, stalking your sister, and all this craziness? Or do you think OP did the exact correct thing? Drop your comments down below. My name's Mr. Reddito. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for daily videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'll see ya!